Hello everyone, you're watching Focused Survival, a tutorial series for 7 Days to Die whose goal is to offer you different objectives to focus on each in-game day in order to maximize your survival. While talking about the objectives of each day, I will also try to explain a few basic concepts for the newly arrived survivors. I also feel the need to mention that this tutorial is meant to be a guideline and not to be taken exactly the way it's presented because, more than likely, you'll find yourself in a situation that forces you to deviate from the presented path, at which point you'll have to improvise, which is what I do most of the time. Before we talk about the gameplay, let's discuss settings. If you happen to be launching 7 Days to Die for the first time, you'd best go to the options menu and choose a player profile or create your own. Afterwards, head over to New Game. Before you start a new game, you're able to choose certain options regarding the difficulty. I recommend you leave these at default, but if you're curious about what settings I prefer, here they are on the screen. You can also choose between a crafted world, Navezgane, or hop onto a randomly generated adventure. This tutorial is here mostly for the second. After you launch the game, you wake up in the middle of nowhere with a note. This note is here to guide you through some basic concepts, so you would do well to complete the objectives it asks of you. First, you're tasked with gathering plant fibers to craft a bedroll and placing it down in order to have a respawn point, just in case staying alive is not your strongest suit. The bedroll also shows up on your compass in case you stray too far and want to return. Then, you're going to want to craft a primitive hatchet with stones and sticks you pick from the ground. If you can't find any small stones lying around on the ground, go ahead and punch a boulder a few times to get them. Third stage on the basic survival quest is tailoring yourself a basic set of plant fiber clothes. If you're in a warmer zone such as the desert, consider replacing your plant fiber hood with a plant fiber hat to keep yourself cooler. Once you have crafted yourself 1 or 2 stone axes, keep an eye out for small withered trees such as these. Early on in the game, the few pieces of wood you get from harvesting each of these stack up to nice amounts and you can gather them as you traverse the wasteland instead of staying still for 30 seconds as you cut an entire tree down. You'll use some of this wood to craft yourself a basic wooden club, handy in case you get pestered by zombies. You're also going to want to mine out 2 of these boulders for the iron and the stones. You will not be able to mine them out completely without getting tired, so while you're waiting for your blue energy bar to regenerate, walk around and gather whatever plants you can find or loot nearby containers or trash piles. Or you can just open your menu and craft things until your stamina regenerates. The stones you mine will be used for crafting some basic arrows, which are next in line for the basic survival quest. But to craft arrows you also need fletching in the form of feathers, which are most commonly found in bird nests, which are scattered everywhere around on the ground, or plucked from chicken or vultures, so keep an eye out for those. Of course, arrows are useless without a bow to shoot them with, but bows are really easy to craft. All you need is a bit of wood and plant fiber. And while it's not in the basic survival quest, I recommend you to also craft a stone shovel. It might prove useful in the future. You're going to want to grab everything that isn't nailed to the ground. Keep your eyes peeled for backpacks, duffel bags, or purses, as these can have some interesting items inside. Trash piles may also contain some useful bits and pieces here and there, such as pipes, duct tape, or glue, which you will need later on. As I have mentioned earlier, you should pick up any plants you find depending on the region you're in. Forests have goldenrod and chrysanthemum plants useful for brewing teas. Tundras may contain blueberries, while the desert is rich in yucca fruits and aloe plants, with the last ones being important ingredients for crafting first aid bandages, which also replenish lost hit points in addition to their original purpose of stopping you from bleeding out when you get bitten. You can also find cotton pretty much everywhere, and you do well to gather as much as you can. If you've done everything correctly thus far, you should have a few primitive weapons, tools, and a few basic materials, preferably before 2 PM. After you craft the bow and arrows, your basic survival quest tasks you with starting a base, which involves building 3 wood frames. Incidentally, the focus of this first day is securing a shelter, either by building it or finding a proper house and clearing it of sleeper zombies before nightfall. Finding shelter isn't hard at all. You can spot most structures from afar, but if you can't see one outright, try looking for roads. Asphalt roads can sometimes lead to big settlements with a multitude of houses, while following dirt roads can lead to either a campsite or a cabin. If you happen to come across this special hunting cabin, you have found the perfect shelter, because this one has a forge inside. The furnace has a chance of being damaged, but it's much easier to repair it than build a brand new one. Obtaining the forge is the focus of day 3 anyway, so you'll gain an extra day to screw around if you find this cabin. My personal favorite is this house. I just walk in, demolish the staircase, and that alone is enough to keep me pretty safe for the first week. If you can't seem to find a house before 2 PM, you should consider building your own wooden shack, which will be pretty weak against zombie attacks. The main purpose of the shack is to conceal you from roaming hordes and protect you from extreme weather. My design for the wood shack is simple. A 4x3 interior with a wall around it. I also put a ladder leading up to a hatch to get to the rooftop to make a quick escape in case zombies break in. If you do go the route of building your shack, you'll have to start cutting down trees and never stop until you have at least 500 wood, which will take you quite some time to gather in the first day. I no longer recommend building your own base in the first day because of the time investment needed to gather the wood and because at some point you'll have to move closer to an important location. Also, I feel the need to share this tip with you. A campfire or a torch in your home will keep you warm, but they can attract nearby zombies to you, so if you hear footsteps at night, try to extinguish the flames. There's also a third option. You can just dig a tiny hole in the ground and call it a day. Don't forget to cover said hole with a couple of wood frames to prevent zombie company. You may skip this whole building process altogether and just sneak around for the rest of the night if you feel inclined to do so. As long as you don't get too close to zombies and you don't light your torch, you will most likely remain hidden. Whatever you do, do not keep smelly food in your inventory when you try to sneak. It can alert nearby zombies to your location. If you happen to hunt an animal, store the meat in a container somewhere. Now that I have made clear the importance of having a shelter and taught you how to build one or deal with being homeless, let's talk a bit about the real threat in this game. Wolves. And zombies, bears, snakes, vultures, and angry boars, and so on. The rule of thumb when it comes to threats is this. If you can fight or outrun them, avoid them at all costs. Zombies are pretty easy to deal with during the day when there's only a few, but you should avoid hordes. Don't bother killing zombies unless they're blocking an objectives, otherwise forget about them and move on. Actually, hold on, you should kill about 10 zombies to get you to level 2. I'll explain why a bit later. You can also have zombies lose you if you just break their line of sight and sneak around. If you do happen to kill a zombie or several, remember to butcher their carcasses until you take a bone, which you will sharpen into a shiv, a primitive tool for skinning animals you're going to hunt in the future. If you are lucky enough to find a knife or a machete, use those for skinning instead because they're much better at the job. Back to the subject of shelter. Let's assume you have your own. What else could you do for the night? Well, you can finish the basic survival quest first of all, build those wood frames and place a campfire down, and when all is done, you'll receive 5 skill points for your efforts. If you also knocked a few heads around, as I have told you earlier, you might even reach level 2 before the day ends, which means you'll have 6 additional skill points for a total of 11. I usually invest these skill points into stamina regen, tool, and weaponsmithing. And if you put the points where I do, you have one last thing to do. While waiting for morning to arrive, you're going to spend the night crafting things. What things, you may ask? Well, first and most important of all, do you remember the iron you took from the 2 boulders I specifically commanded you to mine? Scrap it, and use the scrap iron to make yourself an iron reinforced club, which is a step up from the lame wooden bat you've been using thus far. You should also recraft your other weapons and tools so they all have a quality of 50 instead of 25, which means they're slightly better. Once you do this, do whatever else needs to be done. Turn the cotton you may have gathered into cloth fragments, the cloth into 5 bandages and some armor, if you found the glue or duct tape, and basically just explore your crafting menu to see what else you could craft. But anyway, the day has ended and so did this video, because this was all I could teach you for the first day. I hope I took everything into consideration and you learned a thing or two from this video. But this was all. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for the day 2 video. If you have any suggestions, leave them down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.